The bass pounded through the floorboards, vibrating up through my tired feet as I leaned against the dressing room wall. Sweat trickled between my shoulder blades, makeup caking at the corners of my eyes. 3 more songs, 3 more routines. Then I could go home to my baby girl. 5 minutes, Sophia, Marco shouted, his knuckles rapping against the door twice. Before his footsteps faded down the hallway, I stared at myself in the mirror, hardly recognizing the woman who stared back. Smoky eyes, red lips, glittering bodysuit that left little to the imagination. This wasn't who I was supposed to be. A year ago, I'd been a college student with dreams of becoming a therapist. Now I was dancing at the Velvet Room, one of Chicago's most exclusive gentlemen's clubs, trying to make enough in tips to keep a roof over our heads and formula in Lily's bottles. The scent of stale cigarettes and expensive cologne hung in the air as I reapplied my lipstick. My fingers trembled slightly. Exhaustion. Always exhaustion these days. Between late nights here and early mornings with a teething 7-month-old, I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept more than 3 hours straight. "You look like shit, Soph," Tanya said, dropping onto the bench beside me, already changed into her street clothes. Her shift was over. Mine was just hitting its peak hours. No offense. None taken. I attempted to smile, but it felt more like a grimace. "Lily's cutting another tooth." Tanya squeezed my shoulder. "You're a good mom. Don't forget that." The words were meant to comfort, but they scraped against my conscience like sandpaper. Good mothers don't strip for strange men. Good mothers don't leave their babies with neighbors 4 nights a week, but good mothers also make sure their children eat. And after what had happened with James, I pushed the thought away. No time for that now. James was gone, taking our savings with him when he discovered I was pregnant. Ancient history. "You've got a request for a private dance," Marco said, appearing in the doorway again. "VIP room." My stomach clenched. I hated private dances, the proximity, the entitled hands that accidentally brushed against me despite the no-touching rule. But they paid 3 times what I made on the main floor. "Who is it?" I asked, sliding into my silver heels. Marco shrugged. "New guy. Table in the corner. Been watching you all night." A chill prickled across my skin despite the overheated room. "I haven't noticed anyone new. You wouldn't. He's not exactly drawing attention to himself. But trust me, you want this one." He tipped the waitress $500 just for bringing him a whiskey. Marco paused, his expression softening fractionally. "It's just a dance, Sophia. 15 minutes. Then you can go home early, with extra cash for the babysitter." The mention of extra money made the decision for me. Mrs. Patel was watching Lily tonight, and though she never complained about my late hours, I always tried to pay her generously. She was one of the few blessings in my life since everything had fallen apart. "Fine," I said, slipping past him into the dim hallway that led to the main floor. The club was crowded for a Wednesday. Men in expensive suits clustered around the stages, eyes fixed on the dancers, drinks in hand. The lighting was deliberately low, casting shadows across faces, creating the illusion of anonymity, as if what happened in the Velvet Room stayed there, separated from the world of daylight and consequences. "Back corner," Marco murmured in my ear, nodding toward the VIP section partially concealed behind velvet curtains. I scanned the area, heart thudding uncomfortably against my ribs. It took a moment to spot him among the shadows. A man sitting alone at the most secluded table. Even from a distance, something about him made me falter mid-step. Not his appearance, though what I could see was striking enough. Broad shoulders under what was clearly a custom suit. Dark hair, closely cropped at the sides, strong jawline shadowed with stubble. It was the stillness that caught me. In a room where everyone else moved, drinking, laughing, shifting to get better views of the dancers, he remained perfectly motionless, like a predator conserving energy before the hunt. And he was watching me, not with the typical hunger or drunken appreciation of the other clients, but with an intensity that felt like being dissected. I couldn't see his eyes clearly from this distance, but I could feel them, cold, assessing, seeing far more than the glitter on my skin. The smart thing would be to turn around. Tell Marco I felt sick. Go home to Lily. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and approached, weaving between tables, ignoring the hands that reached for me. The voices calling invitations. The extra money would mean new winter clothes for Lily. Maybe even start rebuilding the emergency fund that James had emptied. As I came closer, a man appeared at the stranger's side, leaning down to whisper something in his ear. Security, not a friend. I could tell by his stance, the way his eyes continuously scanned the room, the barely concealed bulge of what had to be a weapon beneath his jacket. Who needed armed guards at a strip club? The security man straightened as I approached, moving slightly to block my path. The stranger made a subtle gesture with his hand, barely a twitch of his fingers, and the guard stepped aside, though he didn't move far. "I'm Sophia," I said, forcing warmth into my voice that I didn't feel. "Marco said you requested a private dance?" Up close, I could finally see his eyes, dark amber, almost gold in the dim light of the club. They reminded me of whiskey held up to firelight, beautiful but burning. His face was all sharp angles and perfect symmetry, the kind of handsome that belonged in fashion magazines or behind the wheel of a sports car on a coastal highway, not hidden in the shadows of a Chicago strip club. "Dante," he replied, his voice a low rumble that somehow cut through the pounding music. Italian accent, subtle but unmistakable. "Please, sit." It wasn't a request. Despite the please, there was a command in his tone that made my spine stiffen. I perched on the edge of the seat across from him, trying to maintain what little professional distance I could. "The private rooms are," I began. "I'm comfortable here," he interrupted, lifting his glass slightly. Amber liquid, same color as his eyes. "Unless you object." The way he asked made it clear he wasn't accustomed to objections. Something about him radiated authority, not the fake bravado of men trying to impress, but the quiet certainty of someone who always got what he wanted. "That's fine," I lied, calculating rapidly. A dance here, in the VIP section but still technically in public view, was better than being alone with him in one of the back rooms. "The house minimum is 2 songs. He smiled then, just barely, the corner of his mouth lifting. "I've already arranged payment with your manager, for the entire night." My throat went dry. "I don't—" "Just to talk, Sophia." He leaned forward slightly, and the subtle scent of his cologne reached me. Sandalwood and something darker, more complex, expensive. "I'm not interested in a dance." Warning bells clanged in my head. Men came to the Velvet Room for 3 reasons: to drink, to watch beautiful women, or to feel powerful by spending money on both. They didn't pay for just talking, especially not with a dancer like me. Pretty enough to make decent tips, but not one of the headliners who sometimes attracted wealthy regulars. "Then what are you interested in?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. His eyes flickered with something: amusement? Approval? At my direct question. "You work very hard," he said, not answering my question. 4 nights a week. Always the late shift. Always taking the extra jobs when they're offered. The chill that had been hovering at the base of my spine spread across my shoulders. "Are you having me watched?" I observe what's in front of me. He took a sip of his drink, gaze never leaving mine. "You're exhausted. Dark circles under your eyes, hidden beneath makeup. You favor your left ankle, an old injury perhaps. You check your phone whenever you have a moment. Looking for messages from a boyfriend? No, something more important. I should have been terrified, should have walked away immediately and never looked back. Instead, anger flared, hot and sudden. "Congratulations on your deduction skills," I said flatly. "If you'll excuse me, I should—" His hand shot out, catching my wrist as I started to rise. Not painfully, but with enough pressure to make it clear I wasn't going anywhere. The security guard shifted closer, blocking the view from the main floor. "Your daughter is 7 months old," Dante said quietly. "Currently being watched by your neighbor, Mrs. Patel, who lives in apartment 3B. Your rent is 3 weeks overdue, your car needs a new transmission, and the father of your child disappeared with approximately $27,000 from your joint savings account shortly after you told him you were pregnant." The room seemed to tilt around me. My pulse roared in my ears, drowning out the music. "Who the hell are you?" I whispered, trying to pull my arm away. He released my wrist immediately, as if he'd only been trying to make a point. Someone in a position to help you, Sophia. I don't need help. The lie tasted bitter, especially not from someone who's been stalking me. Not stalking. Researching. He said it so casually, as if investigating a stranger's life was perfectly reasonable behavior. I have a proposition for you. I'm not for sale, I snapped, even as a traitorous voice in my head whispered, Aren't you? Isn't that exactly what you do here every night? I'm not looking to buy you, Dante said, something dangerous flashing in his eyes. I'm offering you a job, a legitimate one. As my personal assistant, I almost laughed. Right. Because Fortune 500 companies regularly recruit from strip clubs. I never said I worked for a Fortune 500 company. The way he said it made my stomach drop. The security guard, the expensive suit, the air of casual dominance, the knowledge about my personal life that he couldn't possibly have obtained legally. Who are you? I asked again, quieter this time. Someone with resources. Someone who can ensure you and your daughter never worry about money again. He reached inside his jacket, the guard tensing reflexively before relaxing, and pulled out a business card, plain white, expensive stock, with just a name and number embossed in black. He placed it on the table between us. My offer stands. Think about it. I stared at the card, not touching it. Why me? You're intelligent, resourceful, loyal to a fault. His gaze was steady, unnerving. And you're desperate enough to consider an offer that, under normal circumstances, you would immediately refuse. The truth of his words stung worse than any insult. He'd calculated exactly how vulnerable I was, how few options I had, and he was right. I was desperate enough to at least listen. What would this job entail exactly? I asked, hating how my voice trembled slightly. Initially, managing my schedule, coordinating with my security team, eventually, more responsibility as you prove yourself trustworthy. He finished his drink, setting the glass down with deliberate precision. The salary is $10,000 a month. Cash. You'd be required to sign certain non-disclosure agreements, of course. The amount made me dizzy. More than 3 times what I made at the club, even on good months. Enough to move to a safer neighborhood, to start saving for Lily's future, to never have to dance for strangers again. And what's the catch? There was always a catch. No catch. But I require absolute loyalty and discretion. His eyes hardened. I don't give second chances, Sophia. I knew I should walk away. Whatever Dante was involved in, and it was clearly nothing legal, wasn't worth risking my safety or my daughter's future, but the thought of another year in my dingy apartment, another 1,000 nights dancing until my feet bled, another day of counting pennies for baby formula. I need to think about it, I said finally. He nodded once, as if he'd expected nothing less. You have until tomorrow night. If you're interested, come to this address. He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. 8 o'clock. If not, destroy the card and the address, and we'll never speak again. I should have felt relieved at the easy out. Instead, a strange disappointment twisted in my chest. I should get back to work, I murmured, standing on legs that felt unusually unsteady. Of course. He made no move to stop me this time. One more thing, Sophia. His voice stopped me as I turned to leave. If you decide to accept my offer, you will never dance for another man again. Is that clear? The possessiveness in his tone should have offended me. Instead, it sent a complicated shiver down my spine. Fear mingled with something darker, more dangerous. Crystal, I replied, and walked away, feeling the weight of his amber eyes on my back until I disappeared into the crowd. I finished my shift in a daze, going through the motions without really seeing the men who tucked bills into my costume. All I could think about was Dante's offer, turning it over and over in my mind, examining it from every angle, searching for the trap I knew must be there. When my shift ended at 2 a.m., I collected my things quickly, eager to get home to Lily. Marco stopped me at the back door. So, what did the big spender want? He asked, counting out my night's earnings. I hesitated. Just to talk. Marco snorted. Must have been some conversation. He left you this. He handed me an envelope along with my usual pay. The envelope was heavy, expensive cream paper. Inside was a stack of $100 bills. $5,000. More money than I'd ever held at one time. A note was paperclipped to the cash. For your consideration. D. I should have left the money. Should have told Marco to return it. Instead, I shoved the envelope deep into my bag, mumbled a good night, and stepped out into the Chicago night, where the autumn air cut through my thin jacket like knives. I had 24 hours to decide whether to accept the devil's offer. But as I clutched the envelope containing enough money to pay my overdue rent and buy Lily new winter clothes, I had a sinking feeling I'd already made my choice. I just didn't know yet what it would cost me. Sleep never came that night. I lay beside Lily's crib, watching her tiny chest rise and fall, her rosebud lips occasionally twitching into dream smiles. The envelope from Dante sat on my kitchen counter, calling to me like a siren song. $5,000, a consideration, a taste of what my life could be if I accepted his offer. By morning, my eyes burned from exhaustion, but my mind was oddly clear. I called in sick to my daytime waitressing job, something I'd never done before. One day's wages wasn't worth leaving this decision to the last minute. After feeding Lily and settling her for her morning nap, I pulled out the address Dante had given me. A penthouse in River North, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Chicago. I Googled the building. Luxury condos starting at $3 million. 24-hour security. A legitimate business mogul's residence, not some criminal hideout. But then, the most dangerous predators rarely advertise themselves as such. I spent the day in a strange limbo, tending to Lily while researching everything I could about Dante. No last name made it nearly impossible. Dante and Chicago business yielded nothing useful. Neither did searches for Italian businessmen in the city. It was as if he existed in shadows, visible only when he chose to be seen. By 6 o'clock, I'd made my decision. I would go hear him out, but not commit to anything. I'd ask hard questions, demand specifics about the job. The presence of $5,000 in my apartment had already shifted something inside me, showing me exactly how persuasive money could be when you'd been without it for so long. Just for tonight, sweetie, I whispered to Lily as I dropped her off with Mrs. Patel. Mommy has a job interview. The older woman smiled knowingly, bouncing Lily on her hip. Good. You are too smart for that club. Too good. If only she knew what kind of interview I was heading to. I'd agonized over what to wear. Nothing too provocative. I wasn't selling that part of myself. But nothing too dowdy either. I settled on the only decent outfit I owned. A knee-length black dress with 3/4 sleeves paired with low heels. Professional. Respectable. The kind of woman who might legitimately work as someone's assistant. The cab dropped me off in front of the gleaming high-rise at 7:45. My heart hammered against my ribs as the doorman eyed me suspiciously. I'm here to see Dante, I said, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. Penthouse. The doorman's demeanor changed instantly. Ms. Mitchell, you're expected. He ushered me toward a private elevator at the back of the lobby, using a key card to activate it. Express to the penthouse. The elevator was mirrored, forcing me to confront my reflection from every angle as it shot upward. I barely recognized myself, hair pulled back in a simple chignon, minimal makeup, eyes wide with anxiety. I looked younger than my 24 years. More vulnerable. The elevator opened directly into a foyer with marble floors and a crystal chandelier. A different security guard than the one from the club stood beside an ornate console table, his expression impassive. Ms. Mitchell, he said with a slight nod. This way, please. He led me through a spacious living area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The decor was minimalist but clearly expensive. Leather furniture in muted tones, abstract art on the walls, not a single personal photo or trinket in sight. It looked more like a high-end hotel suite than someone's home. The guard stopped at a set of double doors, knocked once, then opened them without waiting for a response. Sir, Ms. Mitchell has arrived. Dante sat behind a massive desk, focused on a laptop screen. He didn't look up immediately, leaving me standing awkwardly in the doorway for several seconds. Power play. Reminding me who was in control. Thank you, Vincent, he said finally, closing the laptop. That will be all for now. The guard retreated, closing the doors behind him. The subtle click of the latch felt strangely ominous. Dante rose from his chair, and I was struck again by his physical presence. Tall, at least 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested regular workouts, not vanity muscles. He'd exchanged the suit for dark slacks and a charcoal button-down, sleeves rolled to expose forearms corded with muscle. A subtle gold watch was his only adornment. "Sophia?" he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "Please, sit." I remained standing. "Before I do anything, I need to know who you are." "Really?" A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "Direct. I appreciate that." He moved around the desk, leaning against it rather than returning to his chair. Closer to me. "I'm in import-export, primarily between Italy and the United States. That tells me nothing. It tells you everything you need to know at this stage." His voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the surface. "My business interests are diverse and, occasionally, complicated by bureaucratic obstacles." Code for illegal. Had to be. "Are you asking me to do anything illegal?" I demanded. "Would you leave if I were?" The question caught me off guard. Would I? The weight of the $5,000 he'd already given me, which I had no intention of returning, answered that question. "Depends on what it is," I admitted, hating my own honesty. "I won't hurt anyone. I won't deal drugs. I won't do anything that could separate me from my daughter." He nodded, as if my answer pleased him. "I would never ask those things of you. Your role would be administrative, managing my calendar, coordinating with business associates, occasionally accompanying me to meetings or events." "As what, exactly? Your secretary or your arm candy?" His eyes darkened. "You would be my assistant, Sophia. Nothing more, nothing less. Unless you want something more." Heat rushed to my face. "I don't." "Then we understand each other." He pushed away from the desk, walking to a bar cart in the corner of the office. "Drink?" I shook my head. "I need to keep a clear head." He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, the same amber color as his eyes. "The $5,000. Did you use it?" "No," I lied. "Lying doesn't suit you," he said mildly. "Your rent was due. Your daughter needed things. Of course you used it." I lifted my chin defiantly. "I'll pay it back. It was a gift." He took a sip of his drink. "But it comes with a condition now that you're here." "What condition?" "You stop dancing. Immediately. Call your manager tonight and tell him you won't be returning." The demand was exactly what I'd expected, yet it still rankled. "I don't have another job yet. You do if you want it." He set down his glass, moving closer until barely 2 feet separated us. $10,000 a month. An apartment in this building. A smaller unit on the 15th floor. Healthcare for you and Lily. A car and driver when needed. The offer was so extravagant it had to be a trick. In exchange for what, exactly? Your loyalty, your discretion, your complete commitment to the job. And if I decide it's not for me after a month, after 6? You walk away with whatever you've earned. No strings, no consequences. His gaze was unnervingly direct. "Unless you betray me, then there are always consequences, Sophia." The threat wasn't subtle, yet oddly, it didn't frighten me as much as it should have. Maybe because part of me didn't believe any of this was real, this luxury apartment, this dangerous man with his impossible offer. "I need to think about it," I said. "You've been thinking about it since last night." He moved even closer, near enough now that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "What's really holding you back? Fear of me? Or fear of yourself? What's that supposed to mean? You're afraid you'll like working for me," he said softly. "Afraid you'll become accustomed to the money, the security. Afraid you'll compromise your principles for comfort." His accuracy was unnerving. I took a step back, needing distance from his intensity. "You don't know me," I said. But the words sounded hollow even to my ears. "I know desperation when I see it. I know intelligence being wasted, and I know a fighter when I meet one." He returned to his desk, opening a drawer to withdraw a folder. "Your contract. Review it. Take it with you if you need time." I accepted the folder with numb fingers. Contract made it sound legitimate, as if this were a normal job offer and not something that felt increasingly like selling my soul. "When would I start?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. "Immediately. Tomorrow morning." He gestured around the opulent office. I'll show you what needs to be done. Vincent will help you move into the apartment this weekend. I haven't agreed to anything yet, I reminded him, even as I clutched the folder to my chest. But you will. The certainty in his voice made me want to refuse just to prove him wrong. You're too smart not to. That was the second time he'd mentioned my intelligence, not my appearance or my body, the things men usually noticed at the club. It was a calculated observation, targeting exactly what I'd lost when I'd dropped out of college to have Lily. I need to get back to my daughter, I said, needing to escape before I agreed to something I'd regret, of course. He pressed a button on his desk. Vincent will see you out. Review the contract. Call the number on my card when you've decided. Vincent appeared almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting just outside the door. Ms. Mitchell is leaving, Dante said. Please ensure a car is waiting. Yes, sir. Vincent nodded respectfully. I turned to go, but Dante's voice stopped me at the threshold. Sophia. Something in his tone made me look back. Whatever you decide, don't go back to that club. You're better than that place. The words should have felt condescending. Instead, they wrapped around me like a warm blanket on a cold night. Dangerous comfort. I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak, and followed Vincent to the elevator. The ride down was as quiet as the ride up had been anxious. Outside, a sleek black car idled at the curb. Where to, ma'am? The driver asked as Vincent held the door for me. I gave him my address, sinking into buttery leather seats that probably cost more than my entire apartment's furniture combined. As the car pulled away from the curb, I finally opened the folder. The contract was surprisingly straightforward, duties outlined clearly, salary as promised, health insurance, even a college fund for Lily. Everything legitimate on paper, though I had no illusions about the nature of Dante's import-export business. By the time the car stopped in front of my dingy apartment building, I'd read the contract 3 times. Nothing hidden in the fine print. No obvious traps. Just a lifeline being offered by a man who was almost certainly dangerous. I thanked the driver and climbed the 4 flights to my apartment, legs heavy with exhaustion and indecision. Mrs. Patel returned to sleeping Lily, cooing over how good she'd been. Job interview go well? She asked hopefully. I forced a smile. I think so. I'll know tomorrow. After she left, I stood in the middle of my tiny living room, contract in one hand, Dante's business card in the other. The decision should have been impossible. Walking away was the safe choice, the moral choice. But as I looked around at the water stains on the ceiling, the second-hand furniture, the stack of unpaid medical bills on the counter, I knew there was only one real option. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on the card. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. I'll take the job, I said without preamble, but I have conditions. A pause, then a low chuckle. I'm listening. I work 9 to 5. Nights and weekends are for my daughter, non-negotiable except in emergencies. I won't do anything illegal under my own name. And I want everything in writing, the apartment, the health insurance, Lily's college fund. Done, he said immediately. Anything else? I took a deep breath. I want to know who you really are. What you really do. Before I sign anything, the silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Come back tomorrow morning at 9, he said finally. I'll tell you everything you need to know. And if I don't like what I hear? Then you walk away, $5,000 richer with no obligation to me. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. But you won't walk away, Sophia. You seem very confident about that. I am. No explanation. No justification. Just absolute certainty. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day. He ended the call before I could respond. I sank onto my worn couch, staring at my sleeping daughter. What had I just agreed to? What line had I just crossed? And why did crossing it feel so terrifyingly right? Morning came too quickly. I woke with a start, momentarily disoriented to find myself on the couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Lily's whimpering from her crib pulled me fully awake. As I changed and fed her, a heavy knot of anxiety settled in my stomach. Today I would learn the truth about Dante and his business, and about what I'd really agreed to. We might be moving soon, baby girl, I whispered to Lily as I dressed her in a clean onesie. Her wide blue eyes, so like her father's, though I tried not to think about that, gazed up at me trustingly. She had no idea her mother was possibly making a deal with the devil. To a nicer place, somewhere safe. Mrs. Patel agreed to watch Lily again, her eyes lighting up when I mentioned a possible new job and apartment. Very good, she said, bouncing Lily on her hip. Better neighborhood for little one to grow up. I'd chosen a simple gray pantsuit for today, the same one I'd worn to college interviews years ago, slightly altered to fit my post-pregnancy body. Professional, serious, the kind of woman who made rational decisions, not desperate gambles. The same driver from last night waited outside my building at 8:30 sharp. He didn't speak beyond a polite greeting, leaving me alone with my thoughts as we glided through Chicago's morning traffic. I stared out the window at people hurrying to conventional jobs with conventional paychecks. A week ago, that was all I'd wanted. Normalcy. Stability. Now I was heading toward something else entirely. The penthouse was eerily quiet when Vincent escorted me from the elevator. No sign of Dante in the living area or the office where we'd met yesterday. Mr. Russo is in the dining room, Vincent said, guiding me down a hallway I hadn't seen before. He's expecting you. Russo. Finally, a last name. Another piece of the puzzle. The dining room featured a massive table that could easily seat 20, but only one place was set. At the head. Dante stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. He wore another impeccably tailored suit, this one navy blue against a crisp white shirt. Power and privilege wrapped in bespoke wool. He ended the call when he noticed me, slipping the phone into his pocket with a fluid movement. Sophia. Right on time. He gestured to the chair at his right hand. Please, join me for breakfast. We have much to discuss. I've already eaten. I lied, not wanting to create any sense of indebtedness. His eyes flickered with amusement. No, you haven't. You barely had time to dress and take care of your daughter. He pulled out the chair for me. Coffee, at least? My hesitation was brief. I was running on empty, and today, of all days, I needed to be alert. I sat, allowing him this small victory. Black, please. Vincent appeared with a silver pot, pouring rich, aromatic coffee into a delicate cup, before withdrawing silently. Dante took his seat at the head of the table, close enough that I could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jawline. Did you review the contract? He asked, sipping his own coffee. Thoroughly. I placed the folder on the table between us. It all seems straightforward, almost too straightforward, considering you promised to tell me what you really do. A server I hadn't noticed before appeared, setting down plates of fresh fruit, pastries, and eggs. Dante waited until we were alone again before continuing. What do you think I do, Sophia? He asked, his tone curious rather than challenging. I met his gaze directly. Something illegal. Something that requires security guards and cash payments. Something you can't put on paper. He nodded once, as if pleased by my candor. My family has been in business for 3 generations. We began in Sicily, expanded to mainland Italy, then to America in the 1950s. What kind of business? Initially, protection, then importation of goods that were difficult to acquire through conventional channels. Later, construction, real estate, legitimate imports. He speared a piece of melon with his fork. The Russo family has diverse interests. The way he said it, casual yet precise, sent a chill down my spine. Russo family. As in the Russo crime family? He didn't flinch at the blunt question. Some would use that terminology. My mouth went dry. I'd suspected, of course, the security, the cash, the unspecified business dealings. But suspecting and knowing were entirely different animals. You're a mob boss, I said flatly. I prefer businessman with complicated regulatory challenges. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. But yes, in certain circles, I am known as the head of the Russo family enterprise. I should have stood up immediately, should have walked out, called the police, done anything except sit there contemplating whether working for the Mafia was really that much worse than taking my clothes off for strangers. Why me? I asked instead. Why offer a job to a random dancer with no connections, no experience? Dante set down his fork, eyes hardening. You weren't random, Sophia. Nothing in my life happens by coincidence. What does that mean? Fear crept along my nerves like ice water. It means I've been aware of you for some time. Your circumstances, your struggle. He paused, something unreadable flickering across his face. Your connection to James Donovan. The name hit me like a physical blow. James? What does he have to do with this? James Donovan worked for me, indirectly. He handled certain financial arrangements through his position at Meridian Bank. Dante's voice had gone cold. When he disappeared with your savings, he also took something of mine. Something considerably more valuable than $27,000. The room seemed to tilt around me. You're saying my ex worked for the mob? James was a money launderer, though I doubt he would have used that term. He saw himself as a financial innovator, exploiting loopholes. Dante's contempt was palpable. When he learned you were pregnant, he panicked. Took your money and $2 million of my family's assets and vanished. Nausea rose in my throat. James, with his finance degree and conservative suits. James, who'd talked about our future, about marriage and a house in the suburbs. James, who'd apparently been a criminal all along. I didn't know, I whispered. I swear I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Dante's expression softened fractionally. If I believed otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The implication hung in the air between us. I swallowed hard. So this job offer, it's what? A way to keep an eye on me in case James makes contact? Initially, yes. His honesty was jarring. When my men located you 4 months ago, that was my intention. And now? Now I've had time to observe you. Your resilience. Your determination. His eyes held mine. You impressed me, Sophia. Few people would have survived what you've endured with such dignity. Dancing for money isn't particularly dignified, I said bitterly. You did what was necessary to provide for your child. There's honor in that. He leaned forward slightly. The job offer is legitimate. My interest in your connection to James is secondary now. I wanted to believe him. The alternative, that I was merely a pawn in his game to find James, was too humiliating to contemplate. If James contacts me, you expect me to tell you, I said. Not a question. Yes. That is non-negotiable. And what happens to him if you find him? Dante's expression turned remote. That's not your concern, but it was. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and theft and abandonment, James was still Lily's father. His blood ran in her veins. I won't help you hurt him, I said firmly. I don't recall asking for your assistance in that regard. His tone was suddenly cold, reminding me exactly who I was dealing with. All I require is information, should he make contact. I nodded slowly. I understand. Good. Just like that, the tension dissipated. Now, shall we discuss your actual duties? Assuming you still want the position. The sensible answer was no. The moral answer was no. I should walk away from Dante Russo and his dangerous world before I became entangled beyond escape. Instead, I heard myself say, show me what the job entails. Relief, or something like it, flickered across his face. Vincent will show you to your office. I have an office? Adjacent to mine. Come. He stood, extending his hand to help me up. A strangely formal, old-world gesture. I ignored it, rising on my own. Small resistances, they would be important in maintaining whatever boundaries remained between us. The office he led me to was smaller than his, but no less impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered the same stunning city view. A sleek desk held a laptop and phone. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with business volumes and legal references. Your primary responsibilities will include managing my calendar, coordinating with my various business interests, and occasionally accompanying me to meetings or events. Dante moved around the space with casual ownership. Vincent will handle security concerns, so you won't need to worry about that aspect. And the illegal aspects? I asked bluntly. What will my involvement be there? His expression remained neutral. You will be aware of certain activities, but not directly involved. Your name will appear only on legitimate business documents. Your signature only on legal contracts. Clean hands, dirty conscience. The distinction felt meaningless, yet I found myself nodding. When would I move into the apartment you mentioned? This weekend, if that suits you. It's fully furnished, 2 bedrooms. The building has a daycare on the 2nd floor for residents. He watched my reaction carefully. For days when Mrs. Patel is unavailable. The fact that he remembered my neighbor's name, this small human detail amid the criminal enterprise discussion, was strangely disarming. And my hours? 9 to 5, as you requested. Weekends free unless there's an emergency. He paused. Though there will be occasional evening events, fundraisers, business dinners. For those, we'll arrange childcare. It all sounded so normal, so legitimate. As if I were interviewing for an executive assistant position at any corporation in Chicago, not agreeing to work for one of the city's most dangerous men. When do I start? I asked, surprising myself with the decisiveness in my tone. Today, if you're ready. He moved to the desk, opening the laptop. Your login information is here. Email accounts, scheduling software, contacts. He pulled out the chair for me. Shall I leave you to familiarize yourself with the systems? I sat down, the leather chair adjusting automatically to my posture. Yes. I'd like to get oriented. He nodded, turning to leave, then paused at the door. Sophia, one more thing. I looked up, wariness returning. Yes? Welcome to the family. The words sent a shiver down my spine, part fear, part something else I didn't want to examine too closely. As he left, closing the door softly behind him, I stared at the gleaming laptop screen, reflecting my pale face. I had just agreed to work for the Mafia, to live in a building owned by the Mafia, to accept money from the Mafia, all for my daughter, for Lily's future. That's what I told myself as I logged into my new life, trying to ignore the whisper in the back of my mind that wondered if I'd made this choice for other reasons entirely. 3 months passed with surprising speed. Winter descended on Chicago, transforming the city into a landscape of white and gray. From my 15th floor apartment, I watched snowflakes swirl past my windows, coating the streets below in pristine silence. Lily, now 10 months old and attempting her first wobbly steps, pressed her tiny palms against the glass, fascinated by the falling snow. Pretty, isn't it? I whispered, holding her securely as she balanced on unsteady legs. She babbled in response, drool glistening on her chin. Our new life had fallen into a rhythm I never could have imagined that first night at Dante's penthouse. Each morning, I'd drop Lily at the building's daycare center, staffed by women who, I'd come to suspect, were relatives of various Russo family associates. By 9 a.m., I'd be at my desk, managing Dante's complex calendar, fielding calls from business associates, coordinating with his network of lieutenants and capos. I'd learned the hierarchy quickly. Vincent, his head of security, was also his consigliere, advisor, and right hand. Marco, not the Marco from the club, a different one, handled the legitimate construction business. Anthony oversaw the restaurant franchises. Salvatore managed importing. Each man treated me with a curious mixture of respect and caution, careful never to discuss specific illegal activities in my presence. Dante had kept his word about keeping my hands clean. I processed invoices for construction materials, not weapons. I arranged meetings with restaurant suppliers, not drug connections. Yet I wasn't naive. I knew what occurred in those late-night meetings I didn't attend, in those warehouse inspections scheduled when I was already home with Lily. Ms. Mitchell? The building's concierge, Thomas, appeared at my apartment door, holding a large garment bag. Delivery for you. I accepted it with a nod of thanks, already knowing what it contained. Tonight was the annual charity gala for the Children's Hospital, a legitimate event where Chicago's business elite gathered to donate money and enhance their public reputations. Dante was a major donor, his name prominently displayed despite the whispers that surely circulated about the source of his wealth. And I would be accompanying him, as I had to several similar functions over the past months. Another dress? Vincent's wife Maria asked when she arrived to watch Lily for the evening. In her 60s, with silver-streaked dark hair, Maria had taken on a grandmotherly role in Lily's life, something I was both grateful for and troubled by. My daughter was becoming attached to people in Dante's world. For the hospital gala, I explained, hanging the garment bag in my bedroom. Maria smiled knowingly. The boss must make a good impression with his beautiful assistant, no? I ignored the insinuation. Dante and I maintained a strictly professional relationship, or so I told myself, despite the expensive dresses that appeared before every event, despite the way his eyes followed me when he thought I wasn't looking, despite the uncomfortable flutter in my stomach whenever he stood too close. "It's just business," I said firmly. "He needs a respectable companion for these public events." "Of course." Maria's knowing smile didn't fade. "Just business." After she settled in with Lily, I retreated to my bedroom to prepare. The dress inside the garment bag took my breath away. Deep burgundy silk, off-shoulder, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt, elegant, yet undeniably sensual. A note pinned to the hanger read simply, "This color suits you, D." My relationship with Dante had evolved into something I couldn't quite define. Employer and employee, certainly. Perhaps even friends, in moments when his guard lowered enough to reveal the man beneath the calculating exterior. But there was something else simmering beneath the surface, an awareness that neither of us acknowledged. I'd learned pieces of his story over the months. Born in Sicily, brought to America as a child, educated at the finest schools, groomed from adolescence to take over the family business. Now, at 38, he controlled an empire that stretched from Chicago to New York to Sicily. His ruthlessness was legendary in certain circles, yet I'd witnessed unexpected glimpses of compassion. College funds established for employees' children, medical bills paid for associates' family members, genuine distress when one of his men was injured in what was described to me as a business disagreement. At precisely 7 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. "Car waiting downstairs. Dante never came to my door, never entered my apartment, another boundary carefully maintained." The car ride to the hotel was silent, the privacy partition raised between myself and the driver. I clutched my small evening bag, mentally rehearsing the names of donors and hospital board members I'd need to recognize tonight. My role at these events was clear: to be charming, attentive, and forgettable, to facilitate Dante's networking without drawing attention to myself. The grand ballroom of the Palmer House was transformed for the occasion, crystal chandeliers casting golden light over ice sculptures and towering floral arrangements. I spotted Dante immediately upon entering. He had that effect, commanding attention without effort. In his black tuxedo, he stood apart from the crowd, nodding as an older man spoke animatedly to him. He saw me the moment I crossed the threshold, his conversation faltering mid-sentence. Something flashed in his eyes: appreciation, possession, hunger, before his expression returned to polite interest. He excused himself from the older man and moved toward me with that predator's grace I'd come to recognize. "Sophia." His eyes traveled from my carefully styled hair to the burgundy dress to the matching heels. "You look exquisite." "Thank you," I replied, accepting his offered arm. "The dress is beautiful. The dress is merely fabric." His voice lowered. "You make it exquisite." Heat rushed to my cheeks. These moments of undisguised admiration were becoming more frequent, more difficult to deflect with professional courtesy. "I memorized the guest list," I said, changing the subject. "The hospital's new chief of surgery is looking to discuss the pediatric wing donation." Dante's mouth curved slightly. "Always prepared. What would I do without you?" "Pay someone else an exorbitant salary to manage your calendar," I suggested, the teasing tone coming more naturally now than it once had. He laughed, the sound drawing glances from nearby guests, unaccustomed to seeing the notorious Dante Russo display genuine amusement. "Perhaps, but they wouldn't challenge me the way you do." The night proceeded as these events typically did. Champagne flowed, checkbooks opened, Dante moved through the crowd with practiced charm. I remained at his side, supplying names, facilitating introductions, noting potential business connections for follow-up. A perfect professional partnership, until the moment it wasn't. "Sophia Mitchell?" A familiar voice froze me mid-conversation. "Is that really you?" I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. Richard Vance, my former academic advisor, stood before me in a slightly rumpled tuxedo, confusion evident on his kind face. "Dr. Vance," I managed, fighting to keep my expression neutral. "What a surprise." "Indeed. When you stopped attending classes, I assumed—" He broke off, gaze shifting to Dante, who had materialized at my side with predatory alertness. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm interrupting." "Not at all." Dante's voice was smooth, but I felt the tension radiating from him. "Dante Russo. And you are?" "Richard Vance. I was Sophia's advisor at Northwestern before she—" He hesitated, discomfort evident. Before she left the program, Dante's hand settled at the small of my back, a possessive gesture that didn't escape Dr. Vance's notice. "Sophia is indispensable to my organization now. Northwestern's loss, my gain." Dr. Vance's eyes darted between us, drawing conclusions I could almost see forming in his expression. "I see. Well, it's lovely to see you again, Sophia. You were one of our most promising students." "Thank you," I replied, throat tight with suppressed emotion. This man had once believed in my potential, had written recommendation letters for graduate school scholarships, and now he was looking at me with thinly veiled pity, assuming I'd traded academic ambitions for the role of gangster's moll. "If you'll excuse us," Dante said, not really a question. "We have other guests to greet." He guided me away, his hand firm against my back. Once we were safely across the ballroom, he stopped near a quiet alcove. "Who is he to you?" he asked, voice low and controlled. "Just my former advisor, from before Lily." I took a steadying breath, before everything fell apart. Something shifted in Dante's expression. A softening around the eyes, a slight furrow between his brows. "You never told me what you were studying." "Psychology. Developmental psychology." The words felt like they belonged to another person, another life. "I wanted to work with children, and you were good at it." Not a question. "I was, yes." Dante was quiet for a moment, watching me with that intense focus that seemed to peel away layers. "You could go back." The suggestion caught me off guard. "What?" "To school. To finish your degree." His tone was matter of fact. "Your contract includes educational benefits. I assumed they were for Lily, but there's no reason you couldn't use them." The offer dangled before me like a lifeline to my former self. "I have a job. I have responsibilities to you. We could adjust your hours, find a solution." He stepped closer. His scent, that now familiar blend of sandalwood and something uniquely him, enveloping me. "You're capable of more, Sophia. I've always known that." The moment stretched between us, charged with something beyond employer and employee, beyond the boundaries we'd established. His hand moved from my back to my bare shoulder, fingers tracing the edge of the burgundy silk. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, unable to look away from his amber eyes. "Because Dante Russo!" A booming voice shattered the moment. A heavy-set man in an expensive but ill-fitting tuxedo approached, hand extended. "Been trying to catch you all night." Dante's expression closed instantly, the vulnerable moment gone as if it had never existed. He turned to the newcomer with practiced charm, though his hand lingered on my shoulder a second longer than necessary. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and meaningless conversation. The connection, or whatever it had been, didn't return. By the time we left the gala, the professional distance had been fully restored. In the car, Dante sat farther away than usual, staring out at the snow-covered streets. "I meant what I said," he finally spoke as we neared our building. "About school, about adjusting your role." I studied his profile in the dim light. "Why is it important to you, what I do with my life beyond working for you?" He turned to me then, expression unreadable. "Because I've taken choices from many people, Sophia. I don't want to take them from you." The admission hung in the air between us, more intimate than any touch could have been. This dangerous man, who ordered killings with the same ease that he ordered coffee, was concerned about my autonomy, my future. "Thank you," I said softly. "I'll think about it." When the car stopped, he surprised me by exiting first and extending his hand to help me out, not his usual protocol. As I placed my fingers in his, electricity sparked between us, impossible to ignore. "Good night, Sophia," he said, his voice lower than usual. He lifted my hand to his lips, a formal gesture that somehow felt more intimate than a kiss. "Good night, Dante," I replied, withdrawing my hand and retreating to the elevator before I could do something unwise. In my apartment, I found Maria asleep on the couch, Lily long since settled in her crib. I thanked the older woman quietly and saw her out, then stood in the silent living room, still feeling the phantom pressure of Dante's lips against my skin. I was falling for him, despite knowing exactly who and what he was. Despite the violence that funded the luxury surrounding me, despite everything. And from the way he'd looked at me tonight, I suspected the feeling might be mutual. A realization far more terrifying than any threat the outside world could pose. Spring arrived in Chicago, melting away the last vestiges of winter. My life had transformed yet again in the months since the charity gala. I'd taken Dante's suggestion and enrolled in evening classes at Northwestern, resuming my pursuit of a psychology degree. 3 nights a week, after putting Lily to bed, Maria would stay with her while I attended lectures, slipping back into academic life with surprising ease. Dante had reorganized my work schedule without complaint, ensuring I had time for both my job and studies. Something had shifted between us since that night at the Palmer house, a new understanding, unspoken but palpable. He treated me with increased respect, seeking my opinions on legitimate business matters, creating opportunities for me to use my mind rather than just manage his calendar. The dangerous attraction remained, carefully contained beneath professional interactions. Occasional lingering glances, fingers brushing when passing documents. That peculiar tension when we found ourselves alone in his office. Neither of us acknowledged it directly, maintaining the safe distance of employer and employee. Until the night everything changed. I was working late, finalizing arrangements for Dante's trip to New York. Lily was staying overnight with Maria, who had become more grandmother than babysitter to my now 13-month-old daughter. The penthouse was unusually quiet. Vincent and the security team occupied with some matter Dante had deemed best handled without your involvement. I'd learned not to ask questions about such things. The sudden crash from Dante's office sent me running down the hallway, heart pounding. I found him standing amid shattered glass, breathing heavily, knuckles bloodied. The remains of what had been an expensive crystal decanter lay scattered across the floor, whiskey seeping into the carpet. "Dante?" I approached cautiously, scanning for signs of what had triggered this uncharacteristic loss of control. He didn't turn, his broad shoulders rigid with tension. "You should go home, Sophia. You're bleeding." I moved closer, ignoring his warning. "Let me help." I said go home. His voice was dangerously quiet. I should have listened, should have respected the clear dismissal. Instead, I rounded the desk to face him directly. What I saw shocked me. Dante Russo, always composed, always in control, looked utterly shattered. His eyes were red-rimmed, his typically immaculate hair disheveled as if he'd repeatedly run his hands through it. On his desk lay a stack of photos. Surveillance photos, I realized with a chill. One had fallen to the floor near my feet. I picked it up, my blood turning to ice. James. Older, thinner, with a beard and different hair color, but unmistakably James, standing outside what appeared to be a cafe, arm around a pregnant woman. "When were these taken?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. 3 days ago, Montreal." Dante's eyes were fixed on my face, gauging my reaction. He has a new identity, new family. The knowledge should have hurt, should have ripped open old wounds. Instead, I felt a strange, detached acceptance. He's not coming back. No. Dante took the photo from my trembling fingers. He's not. What will you do to him? The question I'd avoided asking for 6 months. Dante's bloodied hand clenched around the photo, crumpling it. What I should have done a year ago. He's going to be a father again. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "Whatever he stole from you, this isn't about money." Dante's voice was ice. It never was. Then what? Betrayal. He spat the word like poison. He was trusted, brought into my organization on my recommendation. And he repaid that trust by stealing and disappearing. He moved closer, eyes burning with controlled fury. "No one betrays the family and lives, Sophia. No one." The ruthless declaration should have frightened me, should have been a stark reminder of exactly who and what Dante Russo was. Instead, I found myself reaching for his injured hand, examining the cuts from the shattered decanter. "This needs cleaning," I said quietly, choosing the safer topic. "Come with me." To my surprise, he allowed me to lead him to the executive bathroom attached to his office. I ran warm water over his knuckles, gently removing glass fragments embedded in his skin. He watched my face as I worked, his breathing gradually steadying. "I don't care about James," I finally said, dabbing antiseptic on the cuts. "He abandoned us. He's nothing to me now, but he's Lily's father." I looked up, meeting Dante's intense gaze. Biology doesn't make someone a father. Being there does. Caring does. Something shifted in his expression. A softening. A vulnerability I'd glimpsed only in rare moments. "You've never asked about Lily's paternity benefits in your contract. What do you mean?" "The college fund, the health insurance, the trust that activates when she turns 18. His voice was soft. "Did you think those were standard employee benefits?" My hand stilled against his. "I assumed they were part of the package you offered to convince me to work for you." "They were never about employment, Sophia." He turned his hand, capturing mine. "They were about making things right, protecting what James should have protected, providing what he should have provided." The revelation struck me speechless. For 6 months, I'd believed Dante's interest in me was primarily strategic, keeping tabs on James's ex, maintaining access to information. Now he was suggesting something else entirely, that he'd felt responsible for us, that he'd wanted to care for us. "Why?" I finally managed. "Why would you do that?" Initially, guilt perhaps, my organization, my responsibility. His fingers threaded through mine, an intimacy we'd never allowed before. "But then I got to know you, your strength, your determination, the way you love your daughter." His voice roughened, and it became something else. The air between us thickened, charged with 6 months of careful restraint crumbling away. I should have pulled back, maintained the professional boundary that kept my world neatly ordered. Instead, I found myself leaning closer. "What did it become?" I whispered. His free hand rose to my face, thumb tracing the curve of my cheek with surprising gentleness. "An obsession," he admitted, the raw honesty in his voice sending shivers down my spine. "A need to protect you, to provide for you, to make you mine." The possessiveness should have repelled me. Instead, heat bloomed in my chest, spreading through my limbs like wildfire. 6 months of denied attraction, of pretending the tension between us was merely professional, collapsed in an instant. "I work for you," I reminded him. The last feeble defense. "Is that all this is?" His face was inches from mine now, his scent enveloping me. "A professional relationship? No," I whispered, surrendering to the truth. "It hasn't been for a long time." His lips found mine with surprising gentleness, a question rather than a demand. I answered by threading my fingers through his hair, drawing him closer, deepening the kiss until it transformed into something hungry and desperate. 6 months of restraint combusting in a single moment. His arms encircled me, lifting me onto the marble countertop, hands exploring with reverent intensity. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against my neck. "Tell me this isn't what you want." "I can't," I gasped as his lips traced fire down my throat. "I won't lie to you." That admission seemed to break something open in him. His kisses turned demanding, possessive, mapping my skin like territory long coveted, finally claimed. I responded with equal fervor, hands pulling at his shirt, needing to feel his skin against mine. "Not here," he growled, lifting me effortlessly. "Not like this." He carried me through the office, down the hallway I'd never entered, into the master suite that occupied the penthouse's eastern wing. The bedroom was as I'd imagined it, masculine, minimalist, dominated by a massive bed with charcoal sheets. He laid me down with unexpected tenderness, amber eyes searching my face. "Are you certain, Sophia? Once this happens, everything changes." I reached up, tracing the strong line of his jaw. "It already has." What followed was nothing like I'd imagined during those nights alone in my apartment, wondering about the man who occupied the floors above me. Dante's public persona, controlled, commanding, coldly powerful, gave way to something else entirely. He loved with the same intensity he brought to everything, but there was unexpected gentleness, an almost reverent attention to my pleasure that left me breathless. After, as I lay curled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, Reality began to seep back in. I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Complicated my already complicated life immeasurably. What happens now? I asked softly. His fingers traced patterns on my bare shoulder. Whatever you want to happen. I raised myself on one elbow, studying his face in the dim light. That's not an answer. A rare, genuine smile curved his lips. I want you in my life, not as an employee, as my partner. His expression turned serious. But I won't pretend this life is simple, or safe, or that I'm someone other than who I am. A mafia boss, I said plainly. Yes. No denials, no softening of the truth. With enemies, with blood on my hands, with obligations that will never disappear. I should have been frightened by his honesty. Instead, I found it strangely comforting. This dangerous man who could have deceived me, could have presented a sanitized version of himself, chose raw truth instead. And Lily? I asked, the most important question. His expression softened at her name. I would protect her with my life, love her as my own. He hesitated, then added quietly, I already do. The revelation pierced me more deeply than any declaration of passion could have. This man, who had entered our lives as an employer, had silently come to care for my daughter while maintaining a careful distance. You've been watching over us all along, I realized, even before I accepted the job. He nodded, stroking my hair back from my face. From the moment I discovered your connection to James, at first as a strategic matter, then because I couldn't stop myself. What about James? I asked, returning to the catalyst for tonight's events. What will you do now? Dante was quiet for a long moment, his hand stilling against my skin. What would you have me do? The question hung in the air between us. A test, a turning point, a measure of who I had become in these months within his world.